Anyway, we're back. Sorry about the disruption, everyone. Due to, I can't tell if it's Sony's or Capcom's bad design, entering the invite menu doesn't show a blocked content screen like you would see anywhere else. It actually just disconnects your stream entirely. And I accidentally bumped the invite menu on my way to the drop to back of queue menu. So anyway, Rillian, we are back if you want to pick it back up. And otherwise, I believe you were cut off at making people nervous.
Okay then, I will indeed say a little bit more about it.
And let me know if the echo is too bad for any reason. I've adjusted our setup here a little bit.
The basic problem that this Guile does is he knows how to follow his sonic booms very well. And he knows how to go from standing jab into the standing fierce, which is not a good idea overall, but if you are used to hitting random-ish buttons, it's not going to work out well for you. He's 2+ after the jabs, and has some good spacing to do other things with.
How good is his jab?
His jab is +3 on block, which is not superbly good, but given the way that Guile plays in general, it can make you pretty nervous, especially since he's going to be jabbing at maximum range. His jab is decently long, and then he'll just hit heavy punch afterwards, which starts up in 8, so you're looking at a 5-frame move effectively, and if you try to hit your mediums, you're going to get hurt.
Right, biggest priority as well. I'm glad I know that, thank you.
Ryu has a solution. Kareen also has a solution. Their standing light kick should just about reach that range without causing any potential problems, and because Guile's pushback on his jab is relatively small, they can just stand light kick and it will counter hit, and because it counter hits, it allows them to do more things than most characters can do on a standing light kick counter hit.
I see.
Kareen gets basically full combos, and Ryu, not necessarily, but Ryu has other options after that. So the key problem is when you have actually had that clash happen, you've dealt with the thing that follows. If you have a 3-frame move, you can barely punish the bullet knee, but their spacing is very good for this too. But in terms of bad habits, and in terms of the psychology behind the bad habits that would probably need to be worked on today in order to overcome this Guile, it is that, first of all, fearing Sonic Boom means that he has all control of all the space. And obviously Sonic Boom is dangerous, and he will hit you if he realizes you respond to it in particular ways. He'll start with other setups. But the psychological problem is always this. If you allow Guile to simply throw Sonic Booms because it feels like you should block them instead of trying something quote-unquote crazy, he'll always have full control of the match at all times. You can see it happening here as well. So we have an Ultra Silver Nash, but the Ultra Silver Nash is not specifically more than a match for this particular Guile. Since they are fully rookie, we don't really know how good they are or what they do, but their Guile is listed as level 1. So they probably have some basic strategies that they're implementing from either another character or just a general understanding of the game. And if you break it down, they're really not doing anything too special. It is the fact that they're not, and still effective, that could be considered intimidating about them. But this is not specifically hard to do in itself. The issue is simply if you went into training mode with Guile, if you understood how to play this game, or possibly even other games, decently well, you got used to Guile's ranges and spaces and the speed he moves at, and this strategy that they're currently implementing is by no means impossible.
I see.
So the first thing you need to look at in terms of whether or not this makes any sense to pursue is this Guile intimidating me? And if so, what bad habit do I have that's allowing this intimidation to happen?
To succeed,
It might
or
be a
just to
neutral habit.
let him intimidate you at all?
It's hard to say, because really it's not a matter of, is this definitely the result of a bad habit? He might just be really good at spacing certain things. All I can tell you is that the breakdown of how they're fighting isn't difficult. This is not extreme high-level Guile tactics, this is good spacing.
Indeed, I did notice that greatly as well. And was commenting on it earlier, actually.
But as you noted, if your feeling is nothing is working, this Guile is going to destroy you, primarily because he will always give you the feeling that nothing you do is working.
Indeed. Because with the spacing as good as his is, and it's good enough that some spaces I'm quite confident in ensuring didn't seem to stay functional. It's really easy to get to, well, basically feel like he's shut down all your options.
So I'd say that the key is you have to be unafraid of him enough to simply not let that happen to you, even though the other option, obviously, is losing terribly because you mess up the execution or similar. This is a battle lounge, it's not even casuals. You're not really going to win more by letting him bully you for the entire time.
Indeed.
And that's one of the things that people most overlook in terms of fighting games. If you're getting close to winning, but not winning, and consistently getting close but not winning using a very cautious strategy, chances are your opponent is just better than you. And your cautious strategy is very unlikely to ever lead to any consistent wins.
So at that point,
They're
you should just...
probably playing on a higher level than you are.
So at that point, what do? You just stop with the cautious strategy to some degree and try and figure things out and just learn things otherwise during the matches?
That's probably the best thing you can do for yourself.
Okay. It's a very hard thing for me, at least personally, to focus on. I always get stuck back in that same place that I end up in when we were playing DOA earlier, where I end up feeling like... Or, well, I lose track of just trying things because I tend to get punished rather hard. And as you noted at that time, I'd never really learned to lose.
The good part is that Guile honestly doesn't punish all that hard. Plus, there are certain situations that you can think of strategically when it comes to Guile, ways to make him jump at you and similar, because if he must jump, he no longer has either Sonic Boom charge or Flash Kick charge, generally. I really wish I understood what I was up with that particular event.
Yeah, me too.
Seems like it would be a net issue.
I would guess that it's something on his internet side. Maybe his connection is flaky for whatever reason. He got rain or whatever.
Very strange. Well, as it stands now, that's going to keep happening, so you might as well play the Nash.
Because if I keep dropping every time this happens now, I'll never get in at all. So alright then, time to lose to Zoner Nash.
Round one. Fight.
Uh-oh. Barely. Not that I remotely expect to win very much in the future. There's one of my mentioned bad habits from last time surfacing with my jumping buttons. Alright. I do actually need to use a bit more meter than that, though. Oh, I tried to punish that and did not work out. Oh. Alright, well there I am. Anyway. One of my bad habits, more so on a meta level, almost, is that it's very easy for me to end up falling into autopilot. Unless I have like something very specific that I am targeting directly. To try and prevent that. But even still, it's the same thing does happen eventually. It just takes a bit longer. And I think that's probably one of the things that holds me back the most in the game, in terms of getting better. And is basically what manifested in DOA the other day. Drop my dash. Means bad things for immediate buff. I don't think I even was putting in the CA in correctly, so I don't think it would have gone off even if I had managed it. Or, well...
One of your larger problems in this match is very similar to the same thing I was mentioning before. There are a bunch of things you could punish with Orochi. There are a bunch of timings where Orochi is the answer. But because Orochi is dangerous to just do, that feeling of, I probably shouldn't do this move, is overriding your ability to specifically see, oh, this is a spacing for this.
I see.
Because he is cleanly putting himself at the positions where Orochi is your optimal response.
Is he?
But
Yeah, and I'm not seeing.
Because
I'm not registering the option at all. Probably basically because of what you say. So raw Orochi, huh? The shortest range one or the slower one?
it probably doesn't matter, and you would actually be able to tell based on where you are in the match.
Alright. Well, I will look for opportunities for that and see what I can find. Not going to find much this round, anyway. And Orochi does have that one projectile property. Oy vey, if you're going to go with these jabs constantly. Okay, good reaction there. And I believe that's out.
The more difficult part of this is that once you've identified a way to get past your opponent's primary strategy, a good opponent usually has the backup almost immediately on deck to use.
I see, yes. And then you have to figure out what to do with that. But it also makes it look like what you're doing isn't helping you. If you're not, like, specifically paying attention to what it stops them from doing.
I would say that one of the larger problems that lower ranked players face against higher ranked ones is that they'll keep on losing to one thing, find a solution to that one thing, but because they feel as if that one thing was the main problem, the main reason they were losing, they keep on focusing on it even after their opponent has already adapted to whatever their response was. Sometimes all you wanted was for them to stop doing the thing. Once you've achieved that, you could go back to quote-unquote playing normally. But it's hard to recognize when your opponent has countered you, because if you had difficulty thinking of what it was you should be doing to begin with, it's not intuitive to you what the counter is sometimes.
Right, and so that's a place where having developed your style a little more, or rather, not having done so, can make it harder for you because you don't necessarily know what it is that you really want to be doing that they're stopping you from. So it makes it harder to find the options. Because obviously he's fought more Koreans in the past, most likely.
Round 2. Fight.
So he probably has some basic idea, at least, of what he dislikes. On my end, that is. And this very well could be the answer, fundamentally, to the question posed by my listed problem from the other day. In the sense of, well, quite simply, it is basically the feeling being that this never works and such. It could very well, and most likely is, just that my opponents manage to stop whatever I'm trying to do, and I don't have any ways to deal with that. And this is something I was considering as well. That's an interesting tactic to get out of the main course of that. And really, when I look at my feelings from it, that's basically what it seems to be. Of course, actually coming to the details of that and understanding it is going to involve some practice and experimentation. So I can see the feelings in action and what is actually specifically causing them. That V-Skill Boom really is a great walking tool, though, for him.
The key to leveling up in this way, especially in battle lounges, is to spend time thinking about, okay, I've tried this counter, it didn't work all that well, but it did hit. And then spend the time in between your own rounds thinking about what you do after it hits and the situations it creates so that you can change the situation back in your favor more. In your case, it would then become a question of, well, if Orochi has hit and knocked the opponent away and down, what do I actually want to do here against Nash or against the Guile?
Sure. And, well, there becomes the question of, well, me not having necessarily developed my style as much as I would really help with this. But for my initial basic consideration, I probably want to move into a particular range that approximately correlates to Karin's stand medium punch. And just try to, which I think is slightly outside the range of most of his things, in terms of normals anyway. And just see what I can get out of that in terms of, at least a few times I remember in the last matches, I was able to cause him some trouble when I got into that position, and more so had control of the situation, or at least he didn't have control of the situation. And I admit certainly that some of this is just probably confirmation bias, but nonetheless, that's the first thought I have on the matter. Well, I am sure Orochi does have meaties that I could use to come in and add pressure directly. I'm not necessarily I don't know them, obviously, directly, and trying to pick them up in this lounge would be a supreme example of master sandbagging, but I also noted that for at least the meaties that I do have, he was quite ready with his invincible reversals and things to deal with them. So I'm not necessarily as inclined to try and mediate this particular Nash in any case. Obviously I have no appropriate experience with the Guile to say, but it wouldn't terribly surprise me if he discourages that when I make a few attempts. Oh man, I totally thought that was going to hit. So I suppose when I face this Guile, which hopefully I will if he doesn't have another random net drop on Amara, I will try and look for what most annoys me about what he is doing and what I want to do that he's not letting me do, and start from there to try and look for what the counter is, which is a relatively natural, basic, and intuitive way to go about things, but also one that, well, my personal focus and execution skill on are not the greatest, as I have noted. Luckily I have a pocket Rillian to assist with at least a bit of this.
Round 2. Fight.
Let's see. So now that that is seemingly over for the moment, or at least between things, what is Amara getting stopped by, and what should she be trying?
In this case, Amara's previous discussion has reduced the problem she has with this Guile down to one thing. Amara sometimes parries when she is more so nervous than because she expects it to work. And this creates the reverse situation as well, where
I see.
she doesn't really get time to figure out what the actual situation she should parry in is.
Sounds like me in a way, with just a different move or situation.
It's mostly the same. Because if you get pushed into the feeling that things are not working, you have to rebuild the morale and confidence to press it again. However, that might not be the right moment to press it.
Indeed, and then that gives you a whole negative reinforcement spiral.
And you're back to the beginning of building back up the confidence to do it again.
Except it was really just a waste, because you didn't get anything out of it that way.
But in your case, you could probably try to be more confident about one of two things. The first is that once he throws one Sonic Boom, he has no way to get close to you. He has to do one of two things. And these two things are not difficult to react to, because one of them comes after you block, and the other is just crouching heavy punch.
I see.
So, the Sonic Boom should not be the thing upsetting you.
Sure. In fact, it seems like I should just be trying to maybe Orochi through afterwards. On reaction to the boom
no.
almost. But I'm not sure how well that would work with Orochi's extant but somewhat narrow and specific. Oops.
The issue is that you're trying to play your own game.
I see.
Stop him from playing his game first, and then you get to play your own game.
I see.
Until then, it's not your turn.
So let's see, that would require...
Once you've stopped him from approaching you after Sonic Boom a few times, then you have basically the freedom to do whatever you want.
I see.
Because he will stop approaching you after Sonic Booms, and if he's stationary, you have much more freedom.
And then I can move, yes. Alright.
But as long as your reaction to Sonic Boom happening and you blocking it is to effectively try to get out of it immediately, or to find a button, or to panic, or to go, well, now it's my turn to do something, you're probably going to lose.
I see. So what should I be trying to do instead in this situation then?
Well, after he throws a Sonic Boom, he's either going to jump, in which case you can simply do a crouching heavy punch, or he's going to do a move that you can do standing light kick after.
I see.
That,
So-
namely.
He's going to give
Guile
me
has
room
no
to-
other options, so it really doesn't matter.
Eh.
And once
Oh,
he's
but
failed to have... Once he's failed to have the effect he was trying for in getting in on you, Guile has no other options. Other than walk up throw, maybe. He's a very linear character overall. And it's in that time frame that you get control of the match, like right here.
Well, before this mess. Alright. Ta.
As you can see, if he does jump or walk forward and jump first, and your crouching heavy punch would have missed, you take some damage, but it's really not that bad.
My crouching
So what
heavy
you
punch?
actually want,
I thought you were talking about his earlier.
what you actually want is to follow him precisely enough forward so that when he throws the Sonic Boom and you block it, you can lure him into doing the next thing.
I see. Okay. Just be close enough that he will try something and that I can then punish afterwards. Okay. So it was basically... One of the options was block the boom and then counter hit the thing that comes after whatever followed the boom.
In one case, you would have to block first,
Sure.
namely the bullet knee, which is -3. You could jab it depending on how far away he was. If he spaced it correctly, the only thing you can probably do is hit standing light kick.
I see.
Otherwise, he's going to jump, and Guile's jump-ins, while good, are not good enough to beat Karin's crouching heavy punch. And
Alright.
if he found a range at which you could do that, chances are you would have meter at that time.
Yes. And then he would get mauled for it.
So, it's a fairly linear thing, but you are generally kept away from it by the fact that you're still trying to play your side of the game first.
I see. Yes, and that is quite well strongly embedded in my psyche and I need to work on. However, hence the practice, I suppose.
The Nash player has far more real problems than Karin and Ryu do, but they have a solution as well. It's just not one that most people would think to use as a general concept. Nash can beat most Guile's jump-ins with his crouching medium punch, and this crouching medium punch also does a decent job against the same bullet knee. So really, the Nash player is effectively letting themselves lose at this point because they only need to hit one button to win this.
I see.
However, since that button won't always work, there are ranges, buttons Guile can jump with, timings Guile can jump with, where the crouching medium punch will just be off and make them feel, well, this failed.
They're not necessarily going to pick it up.
Correct. So he gets to keep on the pressure, much like this, and force them into trying to play a more offensive game, because they'll feel as if they can't do any damage if they don't.
I see. And it does sort of start to become a question on a fundamental level for people trying to play the game. How do you come up with this shit? In the sense of, well, okay, so how I can try things, but how do I recognize when something is actually good or not? And it can sort of be obscured in the way you mentioned with the crouch medium punch being blocked or damaged by other such things. It seems, at least to me, something that's going to take some skill in perhaps calmness, if nothing else, to... It requires some skill to learn how to learn, perhaps.
Well, there's always the option of just being really stubborn. But that is in itself a skill.
Indeed.
It's easier to do, but it can lead to bad situations if your initial idea was not good. My suggestion for players is that when they're confident in their character, they should be stubborn.
Sure. And then eventually
when you're
we'll
learning
learn
a new character,
why they are wrong, if nothing else.
Yes. You will learn something about your character by being stubborn, whether it's this never works, or there is a specific timing where this does work and a specific timing where this doesn't.
Right.
If you're just testing out characters or facing someone who isn't that much better than you and you're in ranked, you don't want to lose the points or something, by all means, try to win by controlling the situation with offense. But this sort of thing isn't really what you do in battle lounges, because you end up putting yourself in too...
Right, they're just going to...
The situation is too much loss. Your opponent is gaining practice with their spacings and timings, and you're gaining very little.
Indeed. Yeah, which is basically our problem in the DOA match the other day, too. I'm certainly capable of being stubborn if I put myself in the right mode for it. But it can make me very inflexible, and when I get... I can still get frustrated by a feeling of randomness in my results. Which can become troublesome in terms of maintaining that as well.
It can be difficult to recognize...
Partly with a skill you're referring to.
Yes, it can be difficult to recognize that your results are not in fact random.
Yes.
Especially when it does come down to hitboxes. But that's why they have those resources for us to check them. At least, why they mine those resources for us to check them.
Indeed. I really need to learn to use one of the comparison tools. I think Tool Assistant has one. So far for actual boxes, I only understand Dontarians.
But as you can see, the Guile's style really isn't different. Sometimes he'll do the forward kick instead, but the chances of this really turning into damage for him are quite small. Even if he counter hits you because you were expecting something else, not really an issue.
It just doesn't convert too much?
Not in general, no.
Okay.
That's one of the other difficult parts of this game to get through. To bring yourself to the point of not fearing certain outcomes simply because they don't hurt enough.
Yeah, that's a hard one to get into your head. Because, I mean, our brains are wired through evolution to not want to lose, not want to get hurt and shit, so... It can be a little difficult to rewire that, basically. I know it's something I certainly still struggle with. On a very regular basis.
So in Amara's case, it basically comes down to the way that this Guile flows after throwing a Sonic Boom means that she should probably parry. But the muscle memory required to parry and just hit the parry button once and absolutely trust that the timing you hit it in is correct.
That's hard.
That is a mountain to climb.
Uh-huh. Yes, that does not sound easy in any way.
Psychologically, it's a nightmare. There's too much negative feedback whenever you get it wrong. But there really isn't another solution to a lot of this. Are they awake? We'll see in a moment, probably. They are awake. So for example, that sequence isn't really beatable by stand-in light kick. It's technically not really beatable by parry either. But
Which one is it?
your chances of taking a lot of damage by hitting either of those things are rather small. He's hitting that punch because he wants you to block it.
Sure.
But as you can see, there's a lot of thought that goes into this, and it's very fast.
Indeed.
Especially since, and I will note to you as well, blocking the blade version is different, and you actually have to
Wait, what?
use your meter at that point. After you've blocked the blade version, use your meter.
The blade version.
Or
being
in Amara's
V-skill
case,
boosted?
technically without even blocking the blade version.
The
She could
V-skill
literally
boosted
just shore you can through it a lot of the time.
one? Now, the V-skill boosted one or the normal one? Which do you mean for blade
The V-skill boosted one.
Okay.
But that right there, that should not feel like a negative. That was a misspacing of a parry. But even the crush counter that came after it wasn't that big a deal.
Sure, because he didn't convert it into anything.
And there are other negatives built into the process that make it feel very difficult or very painful. Because, yes, you're parrying, you're doing well with the parries, but then because you haven't built all the other things that come after parrying something at that range, you don't get much.
Yes, I was just thinking about how incredibly valuable it is when you're trying to train something like this. If you can turn that parry into something big, at least once in a while on the times where you do succeed it, because then, while you are still getting the negative feedback, you at least get some massive positive feedback in exchange. As opposed to, well, yes, I got the parry and like one other hit, but then that doesn't count for much in the grand scheme of damage, and all of that noise that becomes feedback even though it really shouldn't on the actual event itself.
But as you can see, once the opponents are slowed down somewhat, it doesn't feel as rough to deal with this sort of thing.
Yeah. I always notice that when I'm fighting, when someone starts to slow down and I can just breathe a little bit, it really is just my, like, tension level and, so, in a way, perspective on the match.
But people's moves are designed to cause you stress.
Indeed.
And responding to that stress is the extremely difficult part of this game.
I really need to learn to kill stun with V-reversal, because I always think about trying to avoid first stun, or trying to, if I can get a counter hit, converting it and then getting out of the way. I also remember the V-skill too late, if I remember it at all.
Guile wins.
Alright then, my turn. So let's see if I can put together some of that light kick and crouch heavy punch. And see what happens when I do. Or how hard it is for me to get through my own feedback problems. And to just keep it in mind, because obviously I have to prime it properly to begin with. Nope. Not a good time to jab, apparently. Or I end up trying to V-reversal throws. Either way, it doesn't work out for me very well. Yep, that was not the right one. The other frustrating thing can be, especially when there's a great skill differential, or you're just trying to target something really specific in your opponent's game, when you only get to try it once in a round. Especially when you consider just, well, naturally, Street Fighter doesn't have that many events per round.
But this particular match is that. You actually are dealing with that situation often enough that it does come up. It's just that it, again, doesn't feel that way. It's designed to make you feel as if that's not happening. His playstyle is designed to make you feel like that's not what's happening.
I see.
Because as you can see, you actually have had about 4 chances where you blocked that bullet knee, but basically each time you took a little too long to hit the light kick.
Sure. Yeah. And the fact that I can, like, the real tricky and dangerous thing is the fact that it can bias your memory perception, because memory is emotion based or emotion linked and bound and such, and it can feel like you only did something once in a round even though it's happened like 6 times, just because of little weirdnesses of that sort. Uh-oh. Did not mean to be jumping there. Ah, well, I deserve that one. Fair and square. Alright. So it does seem like he's shifted his styles and motivations a little bit.
No, you didn't.
No?
You
Not
just are undergoing exactly what you just described.
I see.
Also, it's standing like kick.
Yeah.
He threw in a little bit more of a particular thing, but that's because the range that he's able to do it from has changed.
I thought.
And I can explain it to you exactly why this happens, and it's an extremely painful thing to go through.
I see.
You walk forward into one sonic boom,
Yeah.
and then you always fail to do it against the next one.
Huh? Failed to, like,
As soon as you
execute the
walk forward
defense?
and get hit by one sonic boom, your mind immediately attempts to find a way to justify the reason that you just got hit. It scrambles, basically. Because sonic booms don't knock you down. It's an entire tactic that Guile and Chun-Li can use by hitting you with moves that don't specifically kill you or knock you down, and therefore force that moment of pause mentally. They're totally at advantage. You can't do anything. But because you didn't get knocked down, you feel as if you can.
Uh-huh. Dear Lord. Alright. So what I really need to do there is I need to block the second boom, basically.
More or less.
Alright.
Your reaction to being hit with boom has not been to keep blocking. It has been to hit buttons.
Right, and that just gets me mauled. And to illustrate the point that we were just discussing, I barely remember him throwing booms after I get hit, after I block booms at all. So, that's a really hard part of the game, is just the... I would call it selective memory, and it is in a way selective memory, but it's more so just memory based on very biased emotional experience rather than actual events.
Well, now that neither of you is playing, I can point out what is going on here. For example, that sequence has happened probably 20 times. Not against just one person either. But there's the boom, there's the knee. The Nash player tends to get out of the way, which isn't terrible, but it doesn't really solve the problem either. So here's extra booms and a jump and some lows. That one was not quite new, but still not quite old either. Because the more he can make you block, the more meter he has to be troublesome in other ways.
I see.
So we've got the blade is beaten for now. But there, the heavy punch, the boom, the walk forward, the swing. That is his general sequence. Light punch, heavy punch, boom, walk forward, and then either jump or do the bullet knee. The key is that he doesn't care because this is effectively perfect pressure. As soon as he gets close enough to do any of those things, if you can't respond, he gets to, once again, do light punch, heavy punch, boom, so on.
Sure, he gets to complete his whole sequence.
I can build a bot to do it if you want, but it's more so a overall thing. If I built a bot that did exactly this, it would teach you to beat exactly this person and nothing more.
Yes, I'm much more interested in learning ways to beat, or to learn to beat, generally people. Or honestly myself, but given, in terms of all my own internal weirdness and related such problems.
But the key to remember here is, as soon as he's decided to walk forward even one step after that boom, he can't throw another one.
Sure.
He can't flash kick either. He's counting on the fact that you don't have a defense for the jump that follows the sonic boom.
I see.
It is a good strategy, and I'm somewhat inspired to make some version of Guile Bot 2.0 that does effectively this, but I would need more Guile practice. But this sequence is very emotional because while the Nash player is losing a ton of health, they really didn't do that much different than they ever do. They just happen to not block in certain situations.
Sure, and then he just goes down.
But emotionally, the feeling is pretty tricky because if you say, well, I'm going to find a way through this jump kick, you take tons of damage when you fail. And the first response the human brain has is, well, I'm not doing that again. But you were in no better situation if he got to continue the pressure.
Yes, but good luck telling evolution that.
But we cannot trick our minds into thinking of fighting games as life or death situations, and even if we did, it still wouldn't work in that way, because we would still be afraid that the big damage was going to be the thing that killed us if we did something wrong.
Yep.
Round one. Fight.
Once we've taken away most of his stuff, it's not really that hard anymore. The problem is that his stuff is very well crafted and extremely hard to take away from him.
Yeah.
Round two. Fight.
A large part of the problem is that we keep on thinking of this game as a holistic experience and do not have the ability to laser focus in on one point of the match as the specific reason we're losing. You have to be able to block out all other damage you've taken and simply see that one thing that keeps happening as the reason you're taking all the damage.
Yeah, and that's really not easy to do at all. That's really hard to do.
But if you can manage it, just to make yourself believe that the reason you took all of that damage was because you blocked a jump in.
Yeah, then your brain, then your wiring will actually start to work for you, and you'll focus on that point, or at least be able to.
At least be able to. If your mind goes, he threw a sonic boom, then he jumped, and then I died, you're going to start focusing more on the jump than things you did wrong after the jump.
Yeah.
So in Amara's case, the problem here is that her perception needs to be, I can't get hit by that sonic blade. I have to Shoryuken the blade itself. But until she gets to, I must yet Shoryuken the actual sonic blade, she can't win.
See.
And what makes that worse is that things like that happen. You get this false sense of, okay, I've got a chance to use my super, but now you have no way to deal with sonic blade, and you have no way to deal with pressure, so you're going to die. Until she gets V-trigger back, until she gets meter back, basically it's his game.
And so now she can deal with the blade.
Yes, now she can deal with the blade again. But by now, as you can see, the situation's already changed again. So now you never get the feeling of reward for what you were trying to do.
Yeah. Ouch. Then stuff like that happens. And you end up basically just totally forgetting or dropping the one thing that actually matters just because it didn't seem that important emotionally in terms of your just instinctive triggers. So let's see if I can get my light kick to work. Yet one more time.
Well, in your case, I will point out that you basically cannot get hit by and then have to block the sonic blade either. You have to go through that. It doesn't matter specifically how you go through that because Karine has more options. But I wouldn't suggest the Rasenha version, the regular Rasenha version, because he'll probably see it coming.
Right, and even if I get it once or twice, it's gone.
Yes. But you can't let that touch you, or you will lose.
I see. So for the moment, the plan is probably to try and get through it with Orochi.
And at that moment, you have to at least try to hit Crouching Heavy Punch. When he jumps after throwing the boom at you,
sure,
you have to try to hit Crouching Heavy Punch.
Have it in my mind at all.
Because there are other things that will happen after he lands the jump kick, even if it doesn't matter. And if he jumps from far enough, then your standing heavy punch works, so it doesn't really...
Sure.
So see that. That is a moment where you feel, damn it, that was stupid. But it wasn't really stupid. It just got you hurt. And him jumping at you would have resulted in approximately the same thing.
I like sort of don't even register it almost to...
But right there, for example, you should have done the exact same thing, and that time you would have hit him. But subconsciously, I'll bet you the reason you didn't do it there is because you got hit the first time. Even though you may not realize that's the reason you didn't do it.
Ouch. Get out of the corner at least. I'm not waiting for the block, actually. Oh, that one's the one I need to get through. Alright, well, that's why I died. And I really am very glad for your analysis and help in this sort of thing, because this is not the sort of thing that I have the ability or skill or focus to put together very easily on my own, even through multiple matches in a battle line setting. Oh, he's hitting his heavy punch. Alright. Nope. That needs to be cross medium. Alright. Down heavy. Now I've got them mixed up, doing them at the wrong times. Well, I'm glad it was only a light that I whipped. I tried for an EX. If I'd gotten a heavy, it would have been bad. But hey. Okay. Anyway then.
Round 2. Fight.
Crap. Oh. And the varying speeds of that makes it very difficult as well. Oh dear. That was an interesting interaction in any case, although it did give him the full screen. And that's all the chances I get.
For some people, depending on their perception of themselves, it's actually easier to do this by trying to drill in the emotion that their opponent is actually boring, not good.
That's interesting.
However, it could just be that this works for really arrogant people.
Well, I can pull off arrogance occasionally, although I'm not necessarily the best at it. I have a myriad of other issues in terms of being as arrogant as I possibly could be. But,
Because if you tell yourself your opponent is boring,
yes. Then you
you
start
stop
to view them as a
expecting them to
low-level
do
pattern.
cool things.
Yeah. And they are, in a way, a low-level pattern. Because, I mean, this Guile is doing more or less the same things constantly. They're just very nice, same things.
Round 1. Fight.
In any case, just thinking about it a little bit in terms of the problem I was expressing my frustration with on last week's Mish-Mash, I can see how this sort of mindset and approach would really basically be the answer to the sort of feelings that I was having in terms of that habit. Not necessarily sure how to go about applying it directly as yet, but it does seem to be the right kind of process.
But even if you don't apply the concept that the Guile player is specifically boring, he's going to throw, and then, in other words, if you started thinking about, could I make Guilebot do this? The answer is blatantly yes. In fact, he is so much like a Guilebot that I'm still seriously considering it primarily because this bot would be the effective version of offensive Guile that we don't currently have.
I see.
I have not previously seen the Guile playstyle brought down to the bot level before.
I see. But he
Not
does
the
it.
offensive one. But he does it. And therefore I can probably make use of it at least a bit.
Mm-hmm. So you at least now have a reasonable base for starting off with it.
Well, I do often base these things off of players if I don't have some core concept that goes with it or the character isn't too complicated.
Sure.
A complicated character, normally I run out of spaces to do things with. Guile is not that.
Sure.
But yes, they use a lot of light punches, so you can easily get the boom in somewhere. You can hide the heavy punch in the boom so that the heavy punch becomes the follow-up for the light punch when the boom isn't what gets done. That sort of thing.
Sure.
He is a tank, but he isn't necessarily a tank that can specifically win. You notice that the Nash, for example, knows that he can't get hit by that. He will do pretty much anything to not get hit by the Sonic Blade. And as his approaches to avoiding being hit by it improve, it becomes harder and harder for the Guile player to do anything specifically effective with it.
Sure.
He'd have to try it from a much closer, unsafe range.
Yeah, I get the feeling that this Guile is like a 3, maybe 4 action Guile bot so far. Not sure how accurate that is necessarily.
I think I could get this into 4 actions. Some of the trickier stuff he does would be hard to record, but probably not too difficult to actually do.
Okay. Well, we have a consideration for our 2.0 set then.
But you see, he's willing to jump and get hit by the kick in the air, because that's way better than getting hit by the blade on the ground, even if you block the blade. So his entire concept is, I am getting out of the way of this move.
Sure. Yeah, and when I was starting to try that, I immediately got seriously screwed up by the fact that it can in fact go at various speeds, because I wasn't really considering that too heavily initially.
Yes, and here's why.
And I got totally screwed.
He has to throw the EX one to do that.
react to
He
that.
has to waste meter. You could just block it. And if he does throw a fast one, and you block it, the threat that the slow one poses isn't there. So they're two separate things.
Wait.
Even though they're the same move, within the match, they're two separate concepts. So what you need to do against one does not apply to the other at all. You should think of them as completely separate moves for the purposes of making your plans.
I was just caught off guard directly by the reaction student. But you're saying he needs to use EX meter to make that functional?
To make it fast enough to catch you by surprise,
I see. So
he
those
must use
ones I can
EX.
block. Because he's limited in how
Those
many-
ones you can block. The ones you got hit by 2 of them, or maybe got hit by 1 and blocked the other early
Yes.
in one of the rounds you had.
Sure.
And the reason he did that, probably, is that if this player understands fighting game psychology very well, and realizes, oh, this person has been avoiding my Sonic Blades, but they also walk forward at me. So I'll just hit them with Sonic Blades that they don't avoid, and that'll
that
make
will mess up my
them nervous
reaction.
again.
To Sonic Blades entirely.
Yep. It's
I
a
see.
relatively easy reset. There's a lot of psychology involved in it.
I
Whether
see.
or not the person does it on purpose, I mean, there are these situations where this sort of thing can be your outcome without the person specifically aiming for that. There's
Yeah.
certain characters that cause those problems just by using their moves normally. But Guile is not one of those characters, so I'm pretty sure that this person
Did that on purpose.
is putting a lot of effort into this.
I see.
Let's hope that they stay with us for the whole stream.
Indeed. Oh, well, I suppose given the time, we can just end the stream when they leave.
I suppose.
Depending on whether or not we have...
But
more
I'm sure
text
that
to
you'd both
consider.
feel better if you got something close to a success/victory against the actual player, and
Indeed.
not post-mortem with a refactored Galbot.
Indeed.
But unfortunately, since so much of this is muscle memory and daring, there isn't really a way to specifically do that. Other than to recognize, hey, I'm not necessarily worse than this person. I just don't have the reactions to do the thing that I need them to... that I need to do to deal with whatever it is that they're doing.
Sure.
That's why the whole small victories concept is so important to people. And also why having high damage and good meaties does help, and even considering what Larabot is for, it's for the idea that once you've gotten them off you, you now get to take a big turn and do a lot of damage, and as you said, get that big feedback where things went your way because you were successful.
So you can record it with fewer relative quantity of successes because the successes you get are really good ones. Or at least they feel that way.
But unfortunately, the Guile players' sequences are extremely crafted, whereas yours are a little bit, okay, I've gotten past this part of the threat, now I'm on to the next part, and now I still don't know what to do because I wasn't thinking that far ahead.
Sure. Oops. And there goes all that meter again, so now she's in trouble.
Well, that was probably a good thing overall, actually.
Huh? So, I mean, on the other hand, it took a large amount of his life, and she really didn't have much left, so... There's that detail. Ouch. I feel like that last boom was one that she would ideally want to parry.
Ideally, she'd want to, or Tatsu over it, but the Tatsu over it would have probably been a bit risky.
Sure.
One very, very difficult part of fighting Guile is to not track his boom on the screen. Track Guile while the boom is still coming at you.
Because the whole point is for the boom to give him lots of space and freedom to move. Do whatever he wants. And that's what you really have to be ready for, because the boom will just hit you in X number of frames either way, assuming you're not moving too much. Universal.
But yes, it's super hard to tell yourself, well, if I don't parry a slow-moving regular boom, I lose. But that is precisely what's happening. All this damage, all of this problem, all of that came from, oh, I let something hit me. Sure. And you think, well, maybe I can get out of this somewhere in there, but it's nearly never happened. And it's not likely to start. So if you think of your problem as, damn it, I couldn't make all of these correct decisions, you were never in a position to make decisions to begin with. It's just that the game makes you feel that way. The only decision in that round that mattered, that she could have really done anything about per se, was the first one. Everything after that is more or less mix-ups or nerves of steel level reactions that would have gotten you out.
I see. Wow. Let's do this.
So for you, when you see a Sonic Blade coming at you, I'm pretty sure your first reaction isn't, oh, how boring, Orochi, or whatever will get you through it. But
Right.
until you get to the point where it's just yawn, bypass, the whole match is still heavily in his favor.
Sure.
So even though you are getting hit by a lot of these, you really just shouldn't. You might as well let them hit you, because the moment you learn to get through them, he has problems.
Mm-hmm. Right, my current problem is with the throws, but it looks like they just come after jumps mainly, which implies that if I did do the crouch heavy punch bit that I was supposed to, it would be fine.
Yep. That's the only other time the throw will come, and chances are you couldn't have done anything about it, because at that point he has options.
Sure. And the trick
But
is
he would have had to get that close to begin with. But you should be thinking, for example, now I can't afford to use my meter because I need it in that particular setup. This one.
Mm-hmm. Just for the... Oh.
See, he has something, and you're thinking, now the normal thought is, damn it, he's not jumping. I don't know what to do now. Why do anything? He's not doing anything to you. You mean chip damage, I guess, but it's not that terrible.
Oh, I was expecting to throw. Sad. Well, really,
But again, that situation was in your favor because you expected the throw, he didn't throw, and you were fine.
Mm-hmm.
So, the feeling that you aren't in control of the match is the hard thing that you're trying to push away.
Yes.
You can totally be in control of the match while defending.
I'm somewhat out of that feeling right now, and it's remarkable how much of a difference it does make. Yep. Getting through that, though, was difficult.
Well, you see, not really, because what you did previously was Mayokin in response to something that was in fact a blade, but you didn't immediately do something else, because you could.
I didn't realize that Mayokin
the recovery of
to...
Exactly. He started a blade, you did Mayokin, the Mayokin didn't hit the blade, obviously.
Yes.
The blade came toward you, and you blocked. There's no way that at your current level of Guile experience you would immediately know to go, okay, my turn. But it also doesn't mean there is no solution, and it also doesn't mean I'm not good at this. It just means I didn't respond.
Well, I don't expect a Mayokin
again,
to succeed against a blade, which is something I suppose I need to actually test.
But it doesn't matter. The point was that you did a Mayokin for what might or might not have been a blade. Because he was throwing regular booms, you were probably just reacting to yellow on the screen, to the noise he made, something.
Right.
But the key is that you pressed the Mayokin and your mind scrambled. It saw that the thing it was expecting to happen is not the thing that happened, and it didn't have a response for that.
Sure.
one. Fight.
So if we look at how the Nash deals with this situation, it's very different. He'll block, and then he'll block some more. But he knows that once he's blocked the boom and gotten into a particular space, he just hits jab. Automatically. The Guile player then has to respond to the fact that he hits the jab. But to him, this is not the hard part of the matchup. That was the hard part, where he got cornered, and then when he gets cornered, the Guile gains the ability to have more approaches and change up the situation.
Sure.
So really, he lost that because he got cornered, not because the Guile has a bunch of cool mix-ups. Because in neutral, in the middle of the screen, he doesn't have any of those. That's one down. So he does it once and gets away, but he falls into the same trap of, I got hit by boom, so I moved. But that time was good. Just block, wait until what comes after the boom, and then hit him. So, based on those three interactions, the Nash is winning. That was a little bit more unexpected, but it doesn't really matter. The problem is that the Guile player is in a good position where you can't jump over the boom. He knows what he's doing in that regard. So you don't have the option of going, okay, I'm just going to jump over your sonic booms and everything will be fine.
I see. Death. No death. Death. Okay.
But despite it taking very long and a lot of his resources, he did win it, and he won it based more so on those initial interactions. Trying to jump out after the boom just now, for example, wasn't terrible, but it didn't really work out in his favor. I presume it's because he's still somewhat reacting to the feeling that the Guile player has mix-ups after the boom, when he only really has those in a particular range.
I see.
And I know for sure that I would be losing here too for the exact same reason. Because I would be trying to do that, what he just did, and gaining probably nothing out of it.
Just because he collected that feeling back when he was in the corner and now he's just screwed.
More or less. It's very unfortunate actually.
Indeed.
But he might still have a chance of winning because, again, it's going to come down to the one same thing. Does he have the nerves to block after a certain thing and then anti-air? He had the nerves for the block, but not the anti-air, so he lost.
Okay.
But it wasn't as if he didn't have the opportunity to do it, because he could have just jumped air throw, and I'm pretty sure it would have worked. And if it didn't work, the situation he would have been in after it is extremely to Nash's advantage in that particular situation. But all of this happens so fast that basically the reason pros are pros is because they talk about awareness and those other things that they're affected by. But there, that exchange, the Nash won it and gets away and gets the life lead barely.
Yeah, I feel like
And
at a low
proceeds to
level,
keep on pushing it.
I feel like at a low level it's very easy for people to perceive who's getting the advantage based on just who does lots of damage at certain points, when really that doesn't necessarily correlate at all. Depending on how the situations do actually come out, or basically what the meaning of the events really is. And it's obviously an easy trap to fall into.
I say that the Nash player's bigger problem is that they don't know a certain property of tragedy, EX Tragedy Assault, because if they did know it, they would 100% be winning this match all the time.
What is it?
It's effectively projectile invincible at some point during it that I don't actually know.
I see.
But it also beats a certain other thing that the Guile is doing. I'll point it out to you the next time I see it.
Alright.
The Nash jumps at a particular point where he could just EX Tragedy instead, basically. And the idea would be, oh, well, if I EX Tragedy and miss, or I misjudge it, or he's blocking, or whatever, I'll be in a terrible situation. True, but the situation you're in only feels better because you're quote-unquote only getting anti-aired. But on the other hand, you could be winning.
Fair enough.
Right there. There's that moment where he is pressing on the Guile is pressing back on him. The two of them go into neutral at a range where neither of their medium kicks will probably hit. But the Nash player could exactly at that spot do Tragedy Assault, EX. But who's going to train themselves to do that now? I suppose in a battle lounge I might try it. I would suggest to the Nash player to try it. But it would probably just go terribly and result in more losing. When they finally have a chance to actually win against the Guile based on all the other stuff they worked so hard on.
Right. Which is important for morale. If nothing else.
The difference is being that a pro player will realize, oh, I'm close to winning. Well, let me just do it.
Right. I have a little buffer. Let me spend it on this. And I do that sometimes, but I'm certainly not a pro.
But I can't necessarily say this is the best option because ES Tragedy Assault is, let's see actually. The primary advantage of the ES Tragedy Assault is that it hits on the way up.
Okay.
It's still minus apparently 23.
Enough. That's
Which is terrible.
That's worse than Mujin.
So you'd have to be really confident before it would occur to you, you know, we're at that range, I should hit this button, I should hit this move.
Yeah. Especially if you got punished, like, in the first 2 or 3 times you tried it.
Still, they definitely seem to have a handle on this situation overall at this point. So I'm actually thinking that they at least have managed to get to the point where they can win against this Guile's movements.
Okay.
Because backdash into jump over again seems to be working well. Nash does have that as an option overall. And there he is again, making sure that the blade does not hit him whatsoever. Unfortunately, Ryu's backdash can't handle that, and Karin's, while good, doesn't give her an option after it that Guile won't be able to beat, so...
Sorrow. Just different jump arcs and such, I suppose.
Yeah. Nash is a zoner, he has extremely long jump in buttons, and it does help a lot.
Final round. Fight.
But unfortunately that moment happened. He didn't block the rolling forward kick, and basically his life melted. It's not like other characters where you can't do anything at all, but it's still about the same.
Sure.
But sadly, once again, our minds are programmed basically to look for the thing that feels like we could have gotten out of it but didn't, rather than the thing way at the beginning which is pressury and difficult and so on.
Hmm.
And once again, for everyone out there, I'll remind that while it is generally good to press in to give the winner some time to possibly come out of the next match, the winner in turn is going to be giving you time to see if you want to change character, change buttons, leave the lounge, any number of things, so that they don't catch you by surprise. So normally the person coming in is the first one to hit. It's fine if you delay a little bit at the beginning to give them time to get out of the match, and obviously to not rob them of their winner's space. But
Sure.
yeah, generally you shouldn't try that bad.
When I'm in second slot, or well, honestly, when I'm in either slot, I'll usually just go, but then if the countdown gets down to like 3 or 2, I'll cancel it. At least 1 or 2 times. Just give them more like 30 seconds rather than 10. However, I can see that this would give a little bit of pressure if you were in second slot or such, just generally. That you should maybe not change your config now or whatever, because there won't be time. So,
This situation is the other one that can really put people on tilt and make them upset with themselves. Amara has currently parried the blade. And this ends badly because she isn't supposed to parry the blade, she's supposed to parry the normal ones. But if the opponent has 2 versions of a move and you need one reaction to different ones, this is probably among the worst of situations, where you've gotten the reaction down but for the wrong one.
I've been there. What a painful anti-air. He's been using it very reliably.
Because this situation creates 2 forms of negative feedback. The first, knowing that you didn't do the thing you were supposed to do, and the second is doing the thing correctly but against the wrong thing and therefore losing.
Right. So you get the negative points on UG, I can't do this, and you get the negative points on UG, this doesn't work, even though it does not really supposed to be a data point at all. In any case, I'll probably run my next couple matches, but I'm starting to get a little bit tired at this point, since we have been streaming for a bit over 2 hours now.
Usual. Although I believe the Nash left, so...
so we'll probably be done
There's
soon.
no specific reason why it has to continue for too much longer. We can just declare Stinmister the undisputed champion of this battle lounge.
Indeed.
And possibly credit him in the creation of Guile Bot 2.0.
Indeed. That'd be an interesting thing to run across if you then came across our bot page. It's like, oh hey, I got credits for this. Interesting. Could be a little bit cool. Just had the feeling if the exit Oaken there, it would totally have gotten her killed. That'd be a weird response. But I'm not a Ryu. Just wanted to do something. I wonder what are my own moves it would correlate to. He should get himself a nice title.
So in this case, in your particular position, there's nothing different that you have to do. And for some people that's frustrating, and for other people that's comforting.
Alright, so that heavy punch did not come out fast enough, probably because of a range issue.
But that's fine because you didn't get hurt. Plus, if you realize that he switches to jumping after every forward kick, then you have a solution to that too.
Problem. My light kicks do about as much damage as his boom chips. Well, a bit more, but still. Ouch.
Well, the good part is that as long as the light kick hits, you can just hit medium punch. There's no real reason why you can't.
Let's see.
In fact, it's basically safe to do this even if you got blocked, so you could just make that whole thing the sequence.
Let's see. Well, let's test that. I have to get the light kick out, of course. I do not remember Guile as one of the people who has an air throw.
Unfortunately, the other problem with this entire thing, and why you could probably practice against this one Guile and go like 100 vert to 0, is because at the end of the day, you're still learning to defend in a way that doesn't let you get on offense. You would have to master the defending first, and then you would get to go on offense, and maybe fight back. So this outcome is basically not unexpected.
Well, redefining the matter of success really does help, because I'm not really paying attention to his life bar. Or to the fact that I'm losing. I've sort of just adapted to that, and my current winning perception is based off of the effects of oh, that was luck. Alright.
No, it wasn't, actually.
No, I mean him standing back up and getting hit by the tail end of the Mujin.
No, it wasn't.
That punish. No? Alright.
You pressing the wrong button was bad, but him getting hit by it was completely unsurprising.
Oh no, I pressed the right button. It just slightly off my timing for the combo.
It's still the wrong button then, isn't it?
Nay? I guess?
That's probably another thing you need to change in your mindset. If the wrong button is, if the button is late, it's the wrong button.
I suppose.
Specifically because if you hit a different button instead by realizing, oh wait, I didn't react in time, which some people can do, then it would be the right button. It's only the...
Sure. Well, my problem was I can do that, but the right button didn't exist. There isn't a right button for that I'm aware of. And that seems to be our cue. So...
Well, he did win 20 games, so...
Indeed.
I mean...
Here, Amara, let's have at it once before we go. Give ourselves a little time to wind down in any case. But yeah. I suppose this is so. I'm pretty sure that if I hit the Mujin Kaku a little bit late, there's no proper button in that case. Although now you have me curious if I could hit him with a Tenko at that point. Because if I can, that could be interesting. I certainly don't know the follow-ups from it now, in terms of being able to execute literally anything. But they exist, and they might exist for that too. So I could perhaps, in good conditions, get even more off of it by going for the Tenko instead of the Mujin at all. Which I would never have even considered if you hadn't pointed this out, I suppose. Phew. And not a Guile. But yes.
Final round. Fight.
Should not have tried for that extra throw.
Round one. Fight.
Dang. Alright. I was being far too greedy for my own CA there.
Final round. Fight.
Uh-oh.
It's go time.
Ah, well. Anyway, everyone, thank you for watching 2MK. This has been a stream on bad habits by KanzukiDyanasty and Brillian, with a guest appearance from Amara in our battle lounge, which you can possibly join next time around if you happen to be around when we're making the stream. We did leave slots open. In other news, we are considering a Guile bot 2.0, which may be available at some point, along with the rest of our bots on our website 2-mk.org/bots, although we may not get around to him soon. We do still have others to focus on. But you can pick up our recently released Laura bot there, as long with, most other bots that, I think we're only a few characters short at this point, for at least the first generation.
5 characters are missing currently.
5 characters. There
And
you
one
have
will
it.
be released this weekend, presumably before Top 8 of Evo.
Indeed. So you can look forward to that. And have a good evening. From KanzukiDyanasty and perhaps
Brillian.
Brillian and Amara, good evening.